The Bicol University, as a premier academic institution in the Bicol region, upholds its commitment to innovate, generate knowledge, and develop communities through its research and extension functions and undertakings. In this time of global health crisis, the university continues its mandate of providing and disseminating relevant, impactful, and timely information that can contribute to sustainable and social development. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 5th Regional Conference on Promoting World-Class Education and the 3rd Regional Research, Development and Extension Conference, the Part 3 of the Virtual Conference on Education, Research and Extension. This session will highlight the thematic area on extension, wherein various papers focusing on community development and innovations will be presented. May I invite everyone to put ourselves in peace, silence, and presence of God as we listen with a prayer through an audiovisual presentation, and let's give honor to our national anthem as we sing the Lupang Hinirang.
Almighty, ever-living God, the most merciful and compassionate, we thank you for creation and the life you have given us. Together, we people of diverse religions, spiritual expressions and indigenous traditions, who invoke you by different names, humbly pray for your providence and protection, in the midst of the COVID crisis. Strengthen and guide government leaders, and private agencies, especially our administrators, faculty and staff, for the wisdom to do what is right and just. Enlighten the minds of students, that despite the educational limitations in this new normal, they may study diligently and effectively. Bless our families, remove our fears, and help us to trust in your love, so that by our example and generosity, we can inspire and help others. Grant all of us, especially the frontliners, good health and accept those who have died in your kingdom. Amen.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, anak ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisili. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mabaga, may nilagang tulad, awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng matawat mo'y tagumpay na naglilinig. Ang bituin na taraw niya, kailan pa mali magdidilim. Lupa ng harangan, bakit pagsinta mo'y langit sa piling mo? Aming ligaya na pamay mga pirang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
To give us the opening remarks, let's welcome and listen to Dr. Luis O. Amano, the Vice President for Research, Development and Extension.
Mascarenhas, sir. Vice President. Office of the Vice President for Research, Development and Extension, Professor Rowena F. Soilo, our OIC, Director of the Extension Management Division, Madam, esteemed extensionists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my pleasure, on behalf of the Office of the Vice President for Research, Development and Extension, to welcome you all to part three of this virtual conference on education, research, and extension. Again, this is the first virtual session due to these extraordinary times. Unfortunately, these circumstances is different this year, but the experience in this pandemic had made it evident to all that digital infrastructure and connectivity are crucial in disseminating knowledge created through research and how it was applied through the conduct of extension services. Today's activity will highlight the result of the strong linkage between community, research, and extension activities being implemented by Bicol University. I wish you all a very fruitful day. Thank you, Extension Management Division, and the entire Office of the Vice President for Research, Development, and Extension family for bringing the extensionists in this activity. Again, it is an honor and pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to a more active participation, to your more active participation in this activity. Thank you very much and good day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amano, for your steering and insightful message. For several years, the Bicol University's administration, teaching and non-teaching personnel, and students have been working passionately and collaboratively to attain its vision of becoming a world-class university. An outstanding, dynamic, strategic, and a visionary leader fuels this commitment. Everyone, let's hear the inspirational message of our beloved University President, Dr. Arnulfo M. Mascareñas.
Thank you very much to our Vice President for Research, Development, and Extension, to our OIC of the Extension Management Division, to our Director of the Research Management Division, to the various centers of the Office of the Vice President for Research, Development, and Extension, to the participants and faculty members of the university, and from other universities who are right now tuning in to this virtual conference. Good morning.
Good morning.
As the leader of a dynamic academic institution, I am always asked to give inspirational messages. In fact, I have given my share of inspirational messages at certain points in time and in various occasions. But this one might prove to be more difficult than the rest, because today, as we continue to face this pandemic that seems unstoppable at the moment, it is a bit difficult to draw inspiration from external sources. Nowadays, we seem to be lacking in inspiration, especially if we look at what's happening in a global scale. So I would like you all instead to draw inspiration from within yourself and from one another. Oftentimes, we tend to compare our offices, units, colleges, or even our institution against other institutions. We look at the externals and think that the grass is greener on the other side. In extending to our communities, for example, we tend to see more of the difficulties that lay ahead instead of the promise of some future gratification. We seldom appreciate the idea of building today, of innovating now, and seeing the fullness of our efforts bloom in a community of innovative adapters and practitioners of tomorrow. That is why virtual conferences like this in this new normal is essential. if only to continue moving forward to a better normal by continuously promoting world-class educational practices anchored on innovation that would redound to service to the community. When innovative people with great ideas converge, then discoveries and good practices are just around the corner. So I hope that even with these virtual conferences alone, you will be enlightened enough to start appreciating your homegrown ideas, skills, and talents, just like what we are doing now. Let us draw inspiration from one another and claim the motivation from within. But it has to be a collective practice. It has to be a conscious choice so that one day we can also say that our grass is greener too. As I commend the organizers of this annual conference and welcome all the guests and participants, I would like to leave some lingering thoughts that would hopefully help us to look at things from a newer or better perspective. So here is a short poem by Erin Hanson. What if grass is greener on the other side? Because it always raining there. We're the ones who never fail to give, hardly enough to spare. We're the people with the broadest smiles, have pillows filled with tears, and the bravest ones you've ever known are crippled by their fears. It's filled with lonely people, but they're never seen alone, where those that lack real shelter make you feel the most at home. Maybe their grass looks greener because they painted on its hue. Because just remember, from the other side, your grass looks greener too. Thank you, and a blessed day to everyone.
Indeed, your words continue to encourage and uplift the spirit of the academic community to remain committed, determined, and passionate in contributing to the attainment of our university's vision. Thank you very much, President Noli Mascarenhas, for your words of inspiration. This virtual conference is a learning engagement for us to gain new knowledge, perspectives, and ideas about the various extension innovations and initiatives that promote sustainable growth and community development. Ladies and gentlemen, to present the overview of the activity, let us welcome the head of the EMD Technical Review, Evaluation, and Monitoring Support Section, Professor Maria Corazon R. Naz.
A delightful and blessed day to the BU President and administrators, faculty and teaching staff, and participants from government and non-government agencies, state colleges and universities, other institutions, and private groups. This activity is part 3 of the virtual conference on Education, Research, and Extension, 15th Regional Conference in Promoting World-Class Education, and 3rd Regional RDE Conference with a thematic area on extension. There are 6 presenters today under this thematic area, the basic of which was the screening during the conduct of the Extension Project Leaders Meeting in December 2020. We have considered that the project program was approved as an extension undertaking in operation within 2018 to June 2020, either funded externally or internally, had been in a longer duration of at least 4 months or more in a series of activities, interventions, and at least 80 to 80% completed with deliverables based on the project program objectives and has potential for sustainability and institutionalization. Due to the limitation of time and challenges in the conduct of preliminary activities, this event came later with a separate schedule as we shall do it today. This event provides an avenue to showcase, promote, and advocate the project programs that brought about outcome and impact to a group of clienteles in the community or the community itself. To inspire and motivate other extension practitioners to engage in extension and community services, to gain insights, best practices, approaches, and strategies, or an innovation of it as location specific for future collaboration and partnership. Involvement in extension and community endeavor is a public service, be it as part of our commitment to our institution, to the community, or a larger society, and to the Almighty as well. Let us be champions in our own rights, with passion in our services, accordingly to our capacity, expertise, and interest to touch people's lives. This event shall be followed with the pre-recorded paper presentations, allowing the presence of the presenters with set of evaluators for with a 5-minute question and answer and rating of their presentations on January 20, 2021 via Zoom. We hope more participation from other colleges, units, and in coming events and years, because we all have stories to tell and share. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Professor Naz, for providing us the detailed process of today's virtual activity. People are the determiners of their present and future conditions. This statement is the core philosophy of the BU Extension, which serves as a guiding principle in initiating different programs and projects in the community. The Extension Service, as a fundamental and inherent function of academic institution, aims to empower communities and stakeholders through diverse capacity-building activities. Today's virtual conference presents 6 papers on the thematic area of extension, namely: first, rollout of homegrown technologies, crab lying-in hatchery technology by Professor Plotomeo M. Nieves, Professor Arnulfo Malinis, and Professor Karil Janeda. Second, promotion of adaptive aquaculture technologies, tilapia fingerlings production by Professor Plotomeo M. Nieves, Professor Salvador B. Bobier, Professor Fred Biron, Professor Corazon R. Colliantes, and Professor Karen Boots B. Briñas. Third, Reef Coral Restoration Program in the Bicol Region, Philippines by Professor Antonino B. Mendoza Jr. Fourth, establishment of a watershed outdoor learning center for outcomes-based education in forestry by Professor Maria Julieta C. Gonzalez, Professor Lordita A. Lianto, Professor Silva Elena B. Payonga, and Professor Sara D. Sambahon. Fifth, Lifelong Education Cum Leadership Academy for Sustainable Development of Community by Professor Rosemary R. Haji. Sixth, Skills Training for Accelerated Growth in Local Government Training for Better Access to Job Opportunities, Trabajo, by Professor Maria Crescia Banyares, and Professor Mary Ann L. Ansana. And now, we start with a presentation. The project aimed to evaluate the effectiveness of the lying-in hatchery concept as a resource enhancement strategy for swimming crabs in different crab fishing grounds in the region. This will be elaborated by the presenter of the paper entitled Rollout of Homegrown Technologies, Crab Lying-in Hatchery Technology by Professor Plutomeo M. Nieves, Professor Arnulfo Malinis, and Professor Karil Janeda.
Good day to everyone. I am Dr. Nieves and I will be presenting an extension project entitled Rollout of Homegrown Technology, Crab Lying-in Hatchery Technology today. This is an extension project which started from research, and it is funded by CHED IDIG. This activity is a component of an EDP project, Enhancing Bicol Herds RDE Management, Innovation and Technology Rollout Capabilities, and it is funded through CHED Institutional Development and Innovation Grants. The present work provides a discussion of the rollout of homegrown technology, crab lying-in hatchery technology, in collaboration with SUCS in the region to address the pressing concerns about swimming crab resources enhancement. For the project objectives and activities, the first objective is to capacitate SUCS partner in implementing the technology. The activities include orientation and training workshop of partner HCIs in the implementation of the technology. Second, orientation of partners, cooperators at two areas, Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, PSU also, and all of these were accomplished with, say for example, for the orientation and inception meeting, we have 18 project partners. In Camarines Norte, we have 6 main project partners in 4 and PSU. The second objective is to evaluate the spawning success in hatchery rate of swimming crabs. For this, we have to establish lying-in setup in partner institution. We only accomplished half of it because some problems regarding logistics. Setup was established only in Sorsogon State in Magallanes, as well as Camarines Norte State College in Mercedes campus. So, without the full operational setup, we could not do objective number 3. But objective number 4 on determining the perception and acceptance of the stakeholders, we did a lot of things. First, we have to prepare the pre-testing of the interview guide, refinement and administration of KI interview, administration, data sorting, and processing. The highlights of the project, like for example, partner capability building. If you look at the documentation, we did it in all partner institutions. We also did orientation and training. The first one is done here in Carolina for the inception meeting. Then we also do site visitation. Say for this slide provides you a picture of an interview with traders who would like to try the lying-in setup in their barangay. Being a fish trader, he has the capability to get the required gravid female. This is also a technical training we did in Camarines Norte, and this was hosted by researchers in Camarines Norte. Then development of setup. If you look at the right the left side, the standard setup. It's a very simple setup with a container, aerator, a bucket full of water for the lying in, and on the going right, we have the setup in the initial setup in Sorsogon State College. Then we have also in Camarines Norte. The right side is the right sample for breeding. This is the gravid crab for the project. If you look at the abdominal portion, you could see the brownish black. Those are the mature eggs that are nearly to hatch. So let's go to the perception study. We did a perception study, and that perception study focused on 4 areas. And with this, our respondents include 12 vendors, 5 in the academe, 21 from LGU, 4 community members, 36 fishers, and 22 traders, a total of 58 participants. We did key informant interview, and that key informant was selected with the assistance of the SUCS and LGU. At that point in time, partners selected people aging from 19 to 63 years old, married males with residency in the area from 5 to 61 years old during the survey. For the first issue, in terms of knowledge, it is sad to note that 72.41 are not aware across sites about crab fishery management or even the technology being introduced. However, it is also worth noting that 86.21% are willing to learn the technology, while 93.10% are willing to support the project. But if you look at awareness of the swimming crab fishery management, it's about half or more than half are not aware. For the species of crab known to them, we have 3 commercially important crab: the Portunus pelagic or kasag, Scylla serrata or the mangrove crab or haniit or alimango, and you have the Christian crab or the crusan, which is being exported live. Anyway, both Christian crab or all of these are being exported today. When it comes to knowledge again about fishing gear for crab, what you could see is that 38% use crab gill net, 36% crab trap, and 26% crab trap. If you try to compare the 3, crab pot and crab trap appears to catch something that could be sold live without much injury for export. While crab gill net, the crabs are easily stressed and they die. When we inquire the status of the fishery before and after, they say or they claim that before 57% of the fisher catch about 10 kilograms and above. However, today, only 28% are harvesting the same volume. Moreover, 30% of the harvest is less than 10 centimeters. On the contrary, the Philippine Blue Swimming Crab Management Plan prescribed the minimum size of 10.2, meaning what are being caught today is slightly smaller than what is the standard limit size. But if you try to look at studies in San Miguel Bay, the size at first maturity of blue swimming crab is 8.5 centimeters and Christian crab 8.3 centimeters. This finding tells us that crab is indeed, or the harvest is indeed getting smaller every day. So, these are the expression in terms of graphical representation of the average catch volume and the average catch size. The blue one is before, while the orange one is today or now, and you could see the difference. Also, we asked whether there is a significant change in the population of crab as well as the fishery, and they are positive that there was, as expressed by 75.86%. The indicator of change is reduced catch volume in the last 5 years, as expressed by 86.21%. The other one disclaimed that there was a reduced catch volume. However, the top causes include increasing the number of fishers. It appears that there are many fishers today. Overfishing. They catch a lot without looking at catch that would be done for the next generation. Catching buried crabs or crabs with eggs, which will reduce the reproductive capacity of the spawning stock. Illegal fishing, and climate change. With regards to attitude, we asked whether they are supported to the protection of the stock and its ecosystem. Well, the answer is really impressive because 93.11% are supportive, 96.55% are willing to help, 82.76 would support and participate. This is a nice findings. However, in terms of practices, like for example, use of plastic straw, tin cans, plastic bottles, and other plastic materials, the answer or the findings is also striking because 5.7% said they never use plastic straw, etc., etc. However, 48.28% use it sometimes, in 46.55% use it always. On the disposal of garbage, 40% never practice throwing their garbage somewhere else. 50% does it sometimes. Unfortunately, only 10% always does it properly. Imagine, 40% never practice it properly, only 50% do it sometimes, and 10% does it properly. A study of Everard present the concentration of microplastic in marine environment is estimated at 10 to the third particles in 1 square meter and is projected to increase 50-fold in the next 80 years. So remember, microplastic is problematic at this point in time. On contributing to conservation and protection of crab fishery and biodiversity by practicing proper waste management, at household level, it is also good that 72.1% are practicing, while at community level, 56.9% are practicing. But in terms of perception, whether crab population will still be enhanced, positively, 75.86% said in affirmative. However, thus prohibiting catching of gravid crab enhance population, they are also positive. So, in this case, if you would ask the best practice, let's go back to the technology. Crab lying in hatchery technology is a practical way of contributing to stock enhancement program for several reasons. The setup is simple and easy. The method is more practical. It produces result. Inexpensive, since the breeder can still be returned to the owner without cost. You know, this is a problem with resource enhancement. Fishers do not want to return the gravid crab because it's an economic loss to them. So they don't entrust it, they want it sold. But if you only let them spawn and get the breeder later after spawning, it would contribute to the biodiversity. It is also supportive to the cause of Philippine blue swimming crab management plan. The technology is also an awareness strategy designed to create mind-shifting effect to fishers and other stakeholders on stock enhancement. This behavioral change as an indirect outcome of the project is just as important as to resource management and conservation. There was this fellow from Mindanao, John Enrique Batapa, who wrote a letter to me, and he was working with a CRM. He was a CRM officer in Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Mindanao, and he said he can replicate it to help alleviate problem of declining crablets in Maguindanao. And for that, I responded, and he said that this behavioral change as a direct outcome of project is just as important to the management of mangrove fishery in the area. And with regards to lessons learned and problems, this is a critical point because the problem was on the MOA approval, which later on caused delays in the program project implementation in the areas covered. So without MOA or MOU, partners cannot execute what was agreed target. We cannot use facilities and equipment also. And perhaps it should be the university officers or office together with project leader to work on this. Again, another problems encountered is the non-attendance of concerned officials during inception meeting caused multiple problems concerning project implementation, such as procurement of field materials, live crab breeders, travel equipment, etc., including unspent balances. The attendance of all officials during the inception meeting, where the nature of the project, logistic requirements, deliverables are presented, could have facilitated and prevent delays and avoid unmet deliverables. We also noticed that project leaders meeting tend to focus on technical review rather than finding resolution to implementation problems. For this, corrective action to address implementation would be better rather than the technical improvement. Balancing technical and financial management to attain project deliverables. We noticed that we return a lot of UBs because of a very strict rules on procurement, which in one way or another directly affect the accomplishment of target deliverables. We may be good in financial, but the outcome of the project is not as good as the financial. So in conclusion, SUC partners are committed to participate but constrained by approved MOA, which defines their respective responsibilities. Rollout could have been successful should the required setup and logistic was procured and provided to the project partners on time. Perception study demonstrated that stakeholders support to the cause of swimming crab resource enhancement despite lapses in attitude and practices. Their positive perspective and outlook on resource enhancement can be made to work successfully in the countryside even without the usual legislation. It is recommended that similar study be done on a multi-locational basis with due consideration to lessons learned for a more conclusive result. Thank you very much.
The next project aimed to refurbish the existing tilapia hatchery facilities and train small-scale farmers, students, and academic personnel on hatchery and innovative aquaculture farming technologies. This will be further discussed by the presenter of the paper entitled Promotion of Adaptive Aquaculture Technologies, Tilapia Fingerlings Production by Professor Plotomeo M. Nieves, Professor Salvador B. Bobier, Professor Fred Biron, Professor Corazon R. Colliantes, and Professor Karen Boots B. Briñas.
Good day, everyone. I'll be presenting a paper on the promotion of adaptive aquaculture technology for tilapia fingerlings production. With me are Salvador Bobier, Fred Beron, Maria Corazon Colliantes, and Karen Boots Briñas. This is a project under IDIG for BUTC. The project is a component of a K-12 transition program of CHED awarded to BUTC under the HCI Knowledge Enhancement Program. This was funded by CHED Institutional Development and Innovation Grant. Specifically, the project is designed to produce tilapia fingerlings for grow-out farming of selected farmer cooperator and interested students in the scheme that put emphasis on promotion of package of technology from the result of tilapia R&D. It also hopes to build capacity of fish farmers and students, develop their entrepreneurial management skill through learning by doing in tilapia fingerling production as in-house entrepreneurial business venture. For the objectives and activities as well as accomplishment, the first objective is refurbishing of the existing tilapia hatchery facility in BUTC. And for that, we were able to construct, but first we demolished 18 units of 1x1x2 concrete tank to give way to the construction of 1 unit 2 meters by 4 meters by 1.2 meters concrete tanks, 4 units of 3x3 by 1.2 concrete tanks, and 1 unit of 6.5 meter by 2.5 by 1.2 reservoir, as well as the repair of water electrical fixtures and the procurement of some equipment. From this refurbished facility, we are to produce 32,000 tilapia fingerlings per run, or a total of 192,000 fingerlings at 6 runs per cycle per year. So we do some breeding activities. For this, we accomplished 62.50%. That is about 120. We produce 120,000 out of 192,000 annual production target, of which 65,370 pieces were dispersed to various clienteles of the IDIG project. Besides that, we also provided 30 pieces breeders to PSU, 10 pieces to Tobacco South, and 72 pieces to BUTC students. For the highlights of this or documentation of the hatchery facilities, this slide would provide you insight of the accomplishment. For fingerling production, we get breeder from CLSU, but take note, the breeder that we were able to procure from BIFAR, National Fish Hatchery and Training Center, was a post fry, so we have to rear it 2 to 3 months to make it as a breeder. So from that, we did the breeding in the various tank facilities, and you have the newly hatched fry. From the fry, you have to rear it to fingerlings, and from fingerlings, you have to rear it to size 24, size 22, and size 17. For the technical assistance and mentoring, we did these things. We go to the farmer. From farm planning to harvesting, we do some technical mentoring, technical advices, and also coaching. Here is a documentation of tilapia harvesting from dispersed IDIG clientele. The third activity was on training. We plan to have trainings, 3 trainings. Unfortunately, we only implemented one on grow-out farming or grow-out farming technology. The target supposedly was 20 small-scale farmers, 30 students, 15 participating HCIs. However, at that point in time, only 31 out of 61 target was able to attend, of which 6 farmers who are engaged in tilapia farming, 1 faculty from PSU, 1 representative from LGU Daet Camarines Norte, 11 graduating students, and 12 faculty. The remaining 2 trainings were not implemented due to some logistical support problem again or constraint. So this is the technical training we did. Our speakers were also faculty from BUTC, but we invited somebody from the feed millers from Sante. The faculty that was involved is Ms. Ciscolyantes and Ms. Briñas. We also invited the present dean to discuss on post-harvest and processing. We also invited the department chairman of the fisheries department. For the technical assistance, well, as you know, the participants that attended the training plus also walk-in clienteles, but focusing on the 31 that attended, all those people were provided with technical assistance, mentoring, and coaching. However, since flagship program of BUTC is fisheries, we also cater to walk-in clienteles. Here are some of the documentations of the people given technical assistance. From Malilipot, Tabaco City, we go as far as Santo Domingo. Most of these are in the 1st District of Albay. But there are cases where clienteles even from Dunsol come just to get some information, even fingerlings for their backyard fish pond. These are all documentations from construction, farm planning, etc., etc. So we did from BUTC, we packaged it. If you look at these things, these are activities, are hatchery activities, from breeding to packaging to distribution. Here are the list of the recipient people during the time of our study. I noticed that this has been done even before, and I guess until today, this practice is also being done. Well, the best practice for this is that it revolves around provider and the recipient. The provider or the project implementer side, the commitment and all-out assistance to client. Making a difference is very important. In this case, from farm concept to farm planning, management, monitoring, technical assistant monitoring is provided by the implementer, and that implementer is BUTC. For the recipient or farm client side, the commitment and participation and willingness to change for better is very important. With this, counterparting scheme works effectively. Well, according to Chinese proverb, give a man a fish and you will feed him for a day, but teach a man to fish and you will feed him a lifetime. Well, for the problems encountered, just like in other projects, again, if people involved would only attend the concept meeting where the nature of the project, the deliverables, the requirements, etc., things could have been smoothly implemented, and things will not go beyond or will not violate government rules and regulations. The second problem is that production capacity was limited to existing tank. You know, while it is important that tank system is an important part of the hatchery system, because in the breeding system, you can control the breeder, the genetic quality of the breeder can be preserved comparatively with pan. But without so much of these tanks where you could have, you need broodstock tank, you need breeding tank, you need nursery tank for fry, nursery tank for the next stage. You need a lot of facilities. And for this, during the time, we requested pan rental to accommodate fry produced in the tank to take advantage of natural food via fertilization management, which is a cheaper alternative. When you use tank, you need to provide artificial feed. Without sustained budget to provide or to buy artificial feed, you cannot produce a better quality offspring. So what we did is to cull breeders and fingerlings in a small quantity but quality offspring. Well, financial management, we look at financial management as problematic because we have to return a lot of money without accomplishing a lot of things. Also, lastly, for the future plans for project sustainability, the project should be institutionalized so that impact evaluation can be done to determine whether intervention made a difference in the lives of the beneficiary. We also think that networking with LGU should be explored on a counterparting scheme in line with the food security and climate change resiliency of the government. So in conclusion, BUTC facilities was improved but production is limited by existing tank capacity. So the total production of fingerling produced was only 120,000. 65,000 were provided to partners, 30 breeders given to PSU, 10 to BUTC, to Tobacco South Central, and 72 to students taking BS Fisheries. We trained 6 farmers, 1 faculty, 1 representative from LGU, 11 graduating students, and 12 faculty and personnel. But we also provided technical assistance, coaching, and mentoring. For the project, culture structure in feeds remains an important bottleneck. Without sustained feeding, the quality and quantity of fingerling produced is affected, and therefore the outcome of the extension program would also be affected. Recommendation, we would like to recommend that the institutionalization of the project as a regular extension activity. Also, the networking with LGU on a counterparting basis. Additional training on hatchery nursery operation and farm records keeping and simple farm records management in simple bookkeeping is deemed very important. Also, the expansion of culture facilities is necessary to increase production capacity in terms of number and size required by prospective clients. Key stakeholders involved in project implementation must attend inception meeting to facilitate project implementation and without violating government rules and regulation, and avoid return of huge UBs. For this, the project is funded by K-12 of CHED. So we thank them for providing us the opportunity. And special acknowledgement is given to BFAR and FTC for providing new strain of tilapia breeders. We also acknowledge all the cooperating farmers, persons, and entities that made this project a success. Thank you.
The next paper, entitled Reef Coral Restoration Program in the Bicol Region, Philippines, will present the establishment of community-based coral restoration technology in the region. Let's welcome Professor Antonino P. Mendoza Jr., the proponent, to discuss the project.
Good day, everyone. I'm going to share to you our extension project on coral restoration in Bicol region. This is a component activity of the program Rollout of Homegrown Technologies to address pressing concerns of the region. I am Mr. Mendoza, the study leader for this extension activity, and our program leader is Dr. Arnulfo Malines. This was implemented by Bicol University in collaboration with 4 state colleges and universities in Bicol, namely Sorsogon State College, Camarines Norte State College, Partido State University, and the BIMSCAT. Project duration is from 2017 to 2019. Approved program budget is 12 million, and for this component, it's 500,000. Numerous studies have reported that coral reefs worldwide are declining in terms of its abundance, diversity, and habitat structure, and were further affected by the compounding impacts of natural processes such as coral bleaching, diseases, and typhoons. It's estimated that around 30% were already destroyed, while almost 60% may be gone by 2030. Similar situation was also observed in the Philippines, where our reefs had declined over the last 4 decades. Present nationwide surveys showed that 90% of the same stations were in poor condition and fair condition categories, having an average hard coral cover of around 22%. In Bicol region, living coral cover range from 30% to 60%, but are continuously declining, and most of the reasons for this low coral cover were anthropogenic, such as destructive fishing, navigation, and pollution. So to enhance and protect further damage to our coral reefs, rehabilitation or restoration activity should be done. What is coral restoration? It is an active process by which reared coral fragments are planted in areas with low coral cover or degraded reef areas. It uses coral of opportunities as donor corals. Corals of opportunities are fragmented corals due to anthropogenic and natural processes. Main purpose of this strategy is to rehabilitate degraded reef ecosystem and to increase reef fish population and its associated organism. So why do we restore corals? We restore corals because of the damages brought about by natural or human impacts. So the image in the lower corner of the slide shows an international ship that ran aground the Dinson Reef in Legazpi City, while the natural impacts are from typhoons, earthquakes, or tsunamis. We also restore corals in areas with low coral cover, and also due to the impacts of climate change. So what are the impacts of coral reef restoration? Coral reef restoration increases the living coral cover in the area. And that is why it is empirical that if the living coral cover are improved, the quality also of the reef ecosystem will be improved, thereby improving reef fish population and enhancing coral adaptation to changing environment to hasten the recovery. Also, coral restoration is very important for ecotourism and of course for research and education. What are the reef restoration projects conducted by Bicol University? In 2012, Bicol University Tabaco Campus participated in a nationwide coral reef restoration program funded by the DOST-PICARD, also known as the Philippine Innovation in Coral Reef Restoration. This was implemented in San Fernando, in Ticao Island, Masbate. And with the success and acceptability of this program, in 2016, Bicol University Tabaco Campus established a coral rehabilitation demonstration site in San Miguel Island. This was participated by local communities and the local government units. Coral restoration as an extension program. Recognizing the importance of reef restoration in Bicol region, together with high acceptance on the viability of coral restoration process, Coral Restoration Project was included as one of the extension or rollout technology under the Institutional Development and Innovation Grants or IDIG program funded by the Commission on Higher Education implemented by Bicol University in 2018. This extension program was conducted region-wide in collaboration with 4 local state universities and colleges, namely Sorsogon State College, Camarines Norte State College, Partido State University, and DBMSCAT. In here, series of methodology training and information campaigns were conducted in HSUCs together with their local partners like the LGU, private sector, and other sectors. This is the process flow in our coral restoration extension activity. We have identified 4 levels of activities: the preliminary activities, coordination, training and mentoring, and implementation. In the first level, we have done identification of partner issues and partner research assistant and designing of the extension activity in general. In the coordination process, we screen the list of faculty mentees and drafting of MOA or MOU. In the training and mentoring, we have done orientation and training workshops and training, establishment, and consultation with LGUs and partner issues. In the implementation process, what we have done is monitoring and the mentoring process. This is the technical summary of the coral restoration project. We have identified 40 beneficiaries in 4 project sites, that is 10 faculty mentees per project site. And the problem area to be addressed in the RDA agenda is coastal area degradation, specifically the coral reef destruction. And the method used in the extension project implementation is technology rollout of coral reef restoration methodologies to issues. The accomplishment is that we have trained our beneficiaries with the coral restoration methodologies, and the number of linkages that we establish is 4. This is the training accomplishment of the project. We have conducted 2 trainings for the coral restoration component. The first one is the orientation and training workshop of partner HCIs on September 10, 2018 with 25 target participants. However, only 24 was able to attend the said orientation seminar. And on the second training, which is on the orientation, consultation, and training of partner LGUs and NGOs on February 21 to 23 and March 18 to 21, 2019. With the target participants of 20, however, we will able to produce 30 participants for these two trainings. Here are some of our documentation during our coral restoration orientation program. So this is the orientation and training workshop of partner HCIs conducted last September 10 to 11, 2018 at Carolina Hotel, Tabaco City. This is the training on the fundamentals of coral biology, then the procedures on collecting fragments, identifying donors, and developing coral nursery units. This is the site visitation and coral assessment conducted last February 21 to 23, 2019 in Magallanes, Sorsogon with the Sorsogon State College researchers. Also here is the training workshop conducted at Mercedes Camarines Norte, conducted last March 20, 2019. So we together in this training workshop are the participants from the local government unit headed by the MAU and also of the NGOs like the pharmacies and women and other sectors. Here are some of the pictures during our diving in Mercedes, and after our diving we have conducted consultation whether where to set up the restoration site and collection sites. This is during our coordination meeting with the president of Partido State University in Goa, Camarines Sur. Again, this is the coordination meeting and site visitation and validation at the BEMISCAT or in Balod, Masbate with the BEMISCAT research. That's all. Thank you.
The next presentation is about the establishment of a watershed outdoor learning center for outcomes-based education in forestry by Professor Maria Julieta C. Gonzalez, Professor Lordita A. Llanto, Professor Silva Elena B. Payonga, and Professor Sara D. Sambahon. The project provided the BS Forestry students to develop higher degree of thinking skills through experiential learning in an outdoor instructive facility.
Good day, everybody. I would like to share with you our experiences as far as our project on the establishment of a watershed outdoor learning center for outcomes-based education in forestry is concerned. This project is funded by the CHED Institutional Development and Innovative Grant in the amount of 3,625,111 pesos and 60 centavos. It was implemented for 2 years starting October 2018 and it ended officially last September 2020. However, we requested for another 6 months project extension because of the ongoing pandemic. The project team members are composed of 3 study leaders, Dr. Lordita A. Llanto, Dr. Silva Elena B. Payonga, and Ms. Sara D. Sambahon, With me, yours truly, Professor Maria Julieta C. Gonzalez as the project leader. We are assisted by 4 full-time project development assistants. The project location are actually areas of previous research development and extension engagement of BUCAF, which are all located in the Albay Tres Quinali A watershed. The watershed is further subdivided into Quinale sub-watershed, where we can find Amtik, Ligao City, and Balinad Pulangi, Albay, and Mayon sub-watershed, which is where Ginubatan Albay is located or part of. As far as the objectives of the project is concerned, generally the project aims to allow a higher degree of thinking and experiential learning skills among BS Forestry students using an outdoor instructive facility where students learn how to learn using innovative outcomes-based education processes. Specifically, organized forestry curriculum guided by a clear picture of what is important for students to maximize learning. Second, enhanced forestry curriculum based on priority needed competencies. And third, develop an outdoor learning facility both for students and people across ages to develop sense of place in the environment and become good stewards of nature. Last, cascade project experiences and learning to Camarines Norte College of Arts and Business. As to the highlights of project results, for the first project objective of organizing the forestry curriculum, we did first a competency needs assessment of forestry graduates. Respondents were Buka Forestry graduates and their employers coming from the business sector, particularly the mining and the geothermal energy sector, the local government units from the provincial, city, and municipal levels, some regional offices such as DNR, DA, DAR, DILG, HLURB, and others. It also included environment-oriented non-government organizations and church-based organizations, and of course, the academe. After the competency needs assessment results were analyzed, the competencies were categorized into technical and general competencies. These were again subjected for validation among the respondents, and after which top 20 competencies were identified. So top 20 competencies which are technical in nature and top 20 competencies which are general competencies in nature. These results were actually inputs to the achievement or accomplishment of the second objective, which is to enhance forestry curriculum based on priority needed competencies. So the 20 competencies were used as decision tools for the development of a Master of Science in Forestry and Nature Management and a Diploma in Urban Forestry. The Master of Science in Forestry and Nature Management curriculum has 3 areas of concentration: watershed management, parks and leisure management, and social and entrepreneurial forestry. To ensure that these additional competencies are included in the baccalaureate level of the forestry curricular offering, a training on outcomes-based education was conducted. It was participated in by not only faculty members of the Department of Forestry, but other faculty from other departments who are teaching subjects in the forestry curriculum. So outputs of this OBE training were the formulation of OBE sensitive course outlines, highlighting additional competencies that should be captured in the conduct of outdoor learning activities, even indoor learning activities, and also learning guides, particularly for the laboratory subjects or whenever students or faculty members wish to conduct an outdoor learning activity. So here is a photo documentation of the 2 days training. One of the outputs of the training, as I've said a while ago, is to come up with a learning guide for students, especially those subjects which has laboratory period. Now, in one of the subjects identified, which is the environmental science subject for first year BS Forestry students, the faculty in charge was able to develop a learning guide, which is entitled Outcomes-Based Education for Sustainable Future, Learning and Living Green. So it was a 2 days activity wherein which students gained new learning and had deepened their appreciation of their course as well as the physical environment. They were also able to concretize the synergistic relationship of man with his natural environment. So hopefully, outdoor learning activities like this would result to positive impact on the academic achievement as well as personal and emotional development of students. So here is one of those outputs, a poem, and then on the other side, yeah, this is still a poem, which each group were able to compose. For the third objective, which is to develop an outdoor learning facility on forestry and nature management, not only for OBE in forestry, but an outdoor learning for people across ages, we conducted series of orientation and collaborative meetings with the Protected Area Management Board of Mount Masaraga, the Community Environment and Natural Resources Office of DNR Ginubatan, as well as the City Municipal Environment and Natural Resource Officers and the City Municipal Agriculture Officers, so as we can be able to discuss the possibility of jointly establishing this watershed learning facility for forestry, nature management, and agroforestry. On the other hand, our agroforestry farmers, there were, I think, 20 of them, were trained on how to develop their farms into watershed outdoor learning facilities, cum agroforestry farm tourism sites. There were 2 trainings conducted for them. The first one was a training workshop on agroforestry farm visitors management. So it focuses on planning the niche or the role of the outdoor learning facility cum agroforestry ecotourism site. And it was also in here that they were able to discuss legal considerations for establishing this learning facility cum farm tourism site. Examples of which are the health permits, the food safety permits, etc. Now, why did we focus on agroforestry farms as an outdoor learning facility? It's because agroforestry farms are selling not only their farm products, but the experiences of doing agroforestry farming. Something that visitors will be excited to know or to experience. So packaging these things, these experiences, including initial knowledge and skills for these visitors, is a product in itself which visitors are willing to pay. So those were discussed during the training. Other topics discussed during the training are the cost limits of operating that watershed outdoor learning facility, home farm ecotourism site, the admission fees, and what are the simple, low cost, but safe facilities to be established. So these are the participants to the training. Another training was titled Training on Watershed Conservation and Management, Linking Agroforestry Farm Tourism to Watershed and People. This training was conceptualized because agroforestry farm tourism is a tool for sustainable development of sub-watersheds and the farming communities. Because in agroforestry, it is incorporated in the agroforestry farming system the different soil and water conservation strategies that would prevent soil and water degradation or soil erosion for that matter and depletion of underwater aquifer. The topics discussed in this training were the inventory of the natural assets of the subwatersheds and agroforestry farms, focusing on the flora and fauna of the area, then also the different landscapes that can be packaged into beautiful sceneries for visitors to appreciate. And last but not the least, the potential ecosystem services being served by the sub-watersheds. Likewise, it was also discussed in this training the possible constraints to the normal functioning or continuous functioning of the watershed for continuous delivery of ecosystem services. So it's very important to note the limitations or the constraining factors so that the participants were able to come up with ideas in terms of mitigating and adaptation measures on how to better protect the subwatershed and their agroforestry farm. And the last topic discussed in here is developing a self-help group's agroforestry farm tourism enterprise plan. So this is another photo documentation of that activity. After the training, only 5 out of the 20 plus agroforestry farmer participants decided to develop their farms into an outdoor learning facility, cum agroforestry farm tourism site. Others opted to just continue operating or managing their agroforestry farm in terms of caring and maintaining the planted trees, the vegetables and other crops, even livestock. At this point in time, it was realized that the 5 agroforestry farmers could be categorized as innovators under the diffusion, adaptation, or adoption process of innovation. They are innovators because they would like, as I've said a while ago, to better manage their farms as both an outdoor facility and a farm tourism site. While the rest of them are considered as early adopters because while they shifted from monocropping to agroforestry farming, but they wouldn't like to take much risk of moving towards creating a nature-based enterprise out of their agroforestry farm. So this is a documentation of the different landscapes and products within the agroforestry farm, which really would entice visitors to come back now and again. Aside from those trainings, in order to strengthen the capability of these five farmer partners or five innovative farmer partners, the project team conducted technical backstoppings for them. The very first technical backstopping activity was the suitability matching of needed competencies. These needed competencies were actually called out of the 20 top technical and 20 top general competencies from the competency needs assessment. So these competencies were matched with the existing competencies or knowledge and skills of farmer partners. Now, what is the point behind this? It's because the farmer partners will be the one to share initial knowledge and skills on forestry, agroforestry, and nature management, both for students and for other visitors. So it is just but right that we are able to have an inventory of their existing knowledge and skills or competencies. The next technical backstopping activity conducted is the design of their facilities. As I've said a while ago, those which are low cost, simple but safe designs of facilities, the horticultural, the horticultural designs or the landscaping of the area. How would the farmer partners be able to combine beautifully the existing fruit trees, ornamental crops, vegetables, and other plants in the area? Plus, of course, the zoning of the agroforestry farm. For instance, where will the different agroforestry farms be located vis-a-vis the facilities in that particular area? Where exactly where will be the contour farms be located? Where exactly will the animal housing be located? And then also, of course, the gardens. The third technical backstopping activity conducted is to capacitate the farmer partners in terms of conducting simple on-farm researches and then consolidating, analyzing, and interpreting the data gathered from these simple researches. The farm researches that were conducted were first farm biodiversity assessment of trees, macrofungi, birds, and insects. So this is very important so that the farms will be able to showcase what are the existing natural assets inside their farms. And likewise, it will be a learning guide also because incorporated in the profile are not only the pictures of the trees, the macrofungi, birds and insects, but even the common name, family name, the genera, even the economic uses of this diverse species of flora and fauna. Plus, of course, their ecological status. The next on-farm research conducted was the performance of trees and hedgerow species. So trees were measured, as well as the hedgerow species were measured in terms of their heights. But for big trees, even the diameter breast heights were also measured. This is very important to have an inventory of existing trees and hedgerow species, and also to be able to see, excuse me, what are the functions of these trees and hedgerow species. And last but not the least, an assessment of the typhoon damages to trees. The recent Typhoon Rolly and Typhoon Ulysses damages to trees. This is very important in order that they can come up with an inventory or a list of typhoon resilient trees. That will be added to the existing trees planted as hedgerows or as shelter belts or as windbreaks in their farm. So these are just few of the pictures of how our how our project staff teach by showing the farmers the exact way of conducting on-farm researches and also gathering data as well as interpreting data. So results of these on-farm researches are all used as decision tools, scientific-based decision tools for farmers so that they can be better able to manage their outdoor learning facility cum agroforestry farm tourism areas. So just few of them. Now, what are the best practices, lessons, and insights learned? Our team were able to come up with several practices, lessons, and insights learned. First is that, as I've said a while ago, our 5 farmer partners were all previous RDA farmer partners of BUCAF. But the thing is, they are innovative and showed interest and determination to navigate the roadmap towards holistic family development. What is this roadmap towards holistic family development? In extension work, we were now able to categorize farmer partners in terms of what are their family goals. So there are 3 temporal points to holistic family development, or there are 3 temporal points in terms of family goals. Point A is food and income sufficiency. As long as they have enough food for their day-to-day needs and the surplus they can sell it, then that can be turned into an income of the family. So at least they have an income to be used for their day-to-day basic needs of the family. But some families, especially our 5 farmer partners, wouldn't settle to just be on point BA. They would like, or they are moving towards the second temporal point in holistic family development, which is point B. Point B is building capacity to attain resiliency. So it's more in terms of coming up with modest savings, not too big, but just enough savings to hold them through when it comes to disasters and economic difficulties or while waiting for harvest. Now, our our 5 partner farmers wouldn't settle to point B only. They are now moving towards point C. And point C is the highest level of holistic family development. And this is in terms of sufficiency and resiliency strengthened. So they have strong sufficiency. They're very strong in terms of sufficiency and resiliency so that they can easily recover from economic shocks and disasters. And these 5 partner farmers are moving towards point C by being able to develop their agroforestry farms into not only a farm tourism site, but even as outdoor learning facilities. The second lesson or insight is the fact that when we introduce a science and technology intervention that is anchored on the extension principle of starting with what people know and have, chances are it will never fail. The level of adaptation or adoption of farmers will be high. Take, for instance, agroforestry. Agroforestry is an old farming system done by our farmers in the upland areas, particularly in the upland areas, in the rural areas, rural upland areas. But the thing is, the uptake is very, very poor. Farmers have a lot of difficulties or misgivings in terms of embracing fully agroforestry farming. So in this project, we tried our very best to motivate them and fully understand that while agroforestry takes quite some time for the return of investment to be seen and to be experienced, but the thing is, the benefits is doubled or tripled compared to monocropping farming system. So it's by letting them realize this thing that we are now being able to motivate them to embrace or to adopt agroforestry because it's not totally new for them. They've been doing it for quite some time unknowingly. They in a small piece of land, they plant trees, they plant their agriculture crops, they even produce animals, and if it is near a river or a lake, they can even turn this small portion of the river or lake into freshwater aquaculture. So that is agroforestry. Another is the realization that social entrepreneurship should be a skill that is needed before, today, and tomorrow by faculty members and staff of different RDE projects. Doing or having a high level entrepreneurial skills, social entrepreneurial skill, I mean, we will not be having difficulties in terms of mobilizing partner farmers. So for instance, what we did 2 days after the typhoon, we have a quick and unannounced visit to their farms and to their homes, just so that we were able to ask them how they are doing, what were the damages, what are their plans, and where can the project come in to help them stand up again and start all over again. Now, the farmer researches, the on-farm researches conducted by the farmer partners is actually a strategy for developing farmer partners' critical thinking skills. It's a strategy for them to put science-based solutions to their day-to-day farming problems. And above all, this inspires them to test technologies, innovations, and initiatives on ground. Because by doing so, they are able to develop their confidence and they are able to develop ownership of the process and the results of these on-farm researches. The next is just a repetition of what I have said a while ago, that in the diffusion adoption process of innovations in extension, the innovators are bankable farmer partners. Although there are few in numbers, but what is important is that they will not return back to their old ways. And unknowingly, their farms also served as showcase for other farmers to adopt agroforestry farming system in the future. Last but not the least, with the pandemic we are experiencing, Policies of the outdoor learning agroforestry farm tourism sites should always adhere to the IATF protocol. So you will see in here that policies really incorporates this protocol we have nowadays. Aside from the fact that it also highlights the ecosystem services being offered by the learning facility. Basically, the ecosystem services are provisioning services, regulating services, cultural services, and supporting services. And for a visitor to be able to, with this, the more that they will be excited to go inside the farm and look for themselves these different ecosystem services. Some are not seen physically, but visitors can surely be able to experience it. Say, for instance, the warm, fresh air in the area. They can be able to experience it. Now, on the other side is a tarpaulin that soon will be standing in the farm, in each of the 5 agroforestry farms or outdoor learning facility, which pictures the natural assets of their farm. So the pictures in here of the trees, the macrofungi, the birds and insects were actually gathered or seen in their farm or assessed in their farm. Now, just like any RDE project, we are not free from problems. And as far as our project is concerned, the main culprit of all these problems, or the so-called root causes of this problem, or root cause rather of this problem, is the ongoing pandemic. When the pandemic started, it delayed project implementation, and it also delayed the procurement of the much needed field supplies. And it has a bearing on the 80% utilization of release funds. Unless we are able to utilize 80% of the release fund, the second tranche will not also be released to us. And that means some of the remaining project activities were put on hold, and worst, our job order staff have not been receiving their wages since July 2020. So what we did is we asked for endorsement from the BU Board of Regents to request CHED ID to extend our project for another 6 months, and also fast track the release of the second tranche. And our JO staff are on a work from home scheme due to their non-payment of wages, so that they can also cut costs on their expenses. Our conclusion, as far as our experience is concerned, setting up an outdoor learning facility as a strategy for OBE in forestry, not only for formal students, but even for other people across ages, provides learning, both for these students and other visitors. And in turn, it contributes to their improved learning. When they go out of the farm, when they go out of the outdoor learning facility, they are carrying along with them added knowledge and skills. And when they come back to their own farms and to their own communities, they can apply those learnings. As one senior citizen had told us, the learning we had in terms of asexual propagation of different colors of gumamela or hibiscus plant is something that she appreciated much, and she's now doing it or experimenting it, so that She is envisioning that in the near future, that will now become her own pastime and at the same time a source of income. Okay? So that is our project in a nutshell. Thank you very much for listening to our story.
The next project, entitled Lifelong Education cum Leadership Academy for Sustainable Development of Community, provided capacity building activities to targeted sectors towards leadership enhancement, organizational development, and sustainable growth. Let's welcome Professor Rosemary R. Haji, the proponent, to discuss the project.
Blessings to everyone. Shalom. I will be sharing to you today the Action Cum Research undertaking of Bicol University Gubat Campus, which was conducted in 2017 to 2019, entitled Lifelong Education Cum Leadership Academy for Sustainable Development of Communities. The outline of my presentation is locale of the project, objectives of the project, highlight of the project results based on objectives, best practices, lessons learned, limitations, and problems encountered, and conclusion. As a background, the project evolved in conducting trainings for the Sangguniang Kabataan officials of Gubat Sorsogon and was successfully implemented by the faculty of BU Gubat Campus. The project was realized with the help of US Peace Corps, who connected us to Habitat for Humanity with the aim of giving their volunteer, Ms. Katja Wheeler, the chance to serve the communities of Gubat. Ms. Wheeler was with our campus for almost 2 years. And the faculty involved in this undertaking is the full force faculty of the campus, as you see in the slide. And our collaborating agencies are the Department of Interior and Local Government, Sangguniang Kabataang Federation of the Province of Gubat, Peace Corps Habitat for Humanity, and we only have an approved budget of 141,000, which was given to us by the Habitat for Humanity. For the local of the project, Gubat is the second-class municipality. It is a catchment area for 3 municipalities and a commercial center, and the coverage of the project is the 42 barangays of the whole municipality. The project aids in addressing the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 4, quality education, to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Sustainable Development Goals number 17, partnership to achieve the goal, strengthen the means of implementation, and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. The methods used is education and training. And the objectives of the project are to provide capacity building training among 260 target participants, to equip the participants with proper knowledge, skills, and attitude in the exercise of leadership skills in community undertakings, to capacitate the youth in organizational development and related skills to enable them to respond to socioeconomic problems. To meet Objective 1, the campus and faculty were able to conduct 4 batches of training with a target of 260 trainers, but in the actual implementation, we were able to train 282 participant SK officials, exceeding the target by 8%. For Objective 2, 85% of the trained SK officials have become active in community undertakings in terms of participation in the local governance, implementation of project in the barangay, served as volunteer frontliners during the COVID-19 pandemic, organizing activities for youth. For Objective 3, 85% of the trained SK officials have involvement in youth organizational development, such as establishment of barangay community garden, tree planting, environmental sanitation, and clean-up drive. For Objective 4, we were able to establish partnership with 3 agencies: Peace Corps, Habitat for Humanity, Department of Interior and Local Government, and Provincial Sangguniang Kabataang Federation. We encountered 2 limitations and problems. Such were delayed MOA with Habitat for Humanity due to revision of template. Then, the COVID-19 hindered the signing of the Memorandum of Agreement between BU and Habitat for Humanity for project expansion. And the solution was, we anchored the legality of the project implemented by using the MOA of Bicol University with Peace Corps, Provincial SK Federation, and the ILG. The following lessons were learned during the project implementation. Number 1 is proper planning, coordination, teamwork of the implementers is important in this undertaking. Number 2 is leveling of expectation. At the start of the project, implementation worked well. It was backed up by openness, acceptance of the program, policies and procedures, and transparency in the project implementation. The third one is synergy of the partners in terms of pooling of resources to be able to serve others, such as human resource, financial, supplies and equipments, and others. And recognition of the fact that there are other agencies who has educational resources that can be used in educating communities. Another lesson is realization that we can implement community service with meager funding through partnership. And the last one is BUGC faculty are development agents who are models of volunteerism, who can work for a cause in service for all. For best practices, the first best practice is that trainers training for the faculty was conducted by the funding donor for free. Then series of meeting and planning was conducted to clear out policies and guidelines in the conduct of the training. Modules were readily provided by Habitat and the ILG with minimal inputs from the trainers, and improved modules were implemented by the faculty. The trainers rendered voluntary service for this training without any new remuneration, and Habitat for Humanity is there, gave us the funding for the meals and snacks of the participants. Open communication between the participants with full support from the respective barangays and municipal and provincial officials. Training was conducted with a small fund of 250 pesos per participant for 2 days to include training materials, meals, and snacks provided by Habitat for Humanity and the ILG Fund. For recommendation, we recommend to conduct an in-depth research study on the application of the skills learned in the training, and to continue the partnership with the funding donors for the expansion of the project in other localities or municipalities. In here, you will see the photo documentation during the conduct of the training. Thank you.
The sixth presentation is entitled Skills Training for Accelerated Growth in Local Government Training for Better Access to Job Opportunities, Trabajo. The project aimed to capacitate local government units in the development of their business plans, workforce development plans, and investment collaterals. Let's hear Professor Maria Crescia Banyares and Professor Mary Ann L. Ansano the project proponents as they discussed their paper.
Good morning, everyone. I am Maria Crescenti Banyares, and I will be presenting to you the Training for Better Access to Job Opportunities and Local Economic Development for Local Government Units, an extension project of Bicol University College of Business Economics and Management. The ASEAN leaders established the ASEAN Economic Community, or AEC, the goal of which is the regional economic integration by 2015 and envisages the following key characteristics: a single market and production base, a highly competitive economic region, a region of equitable economic development, and a region fully integrated into the global economy. The AEC intends to transform ASEAN into a region with free movement of goods, services, investment, skilled labor, and free flow of capital. In the Philippines, there is a necessity to capacitate and improve the skills and knowledge of the human resource for them to become a global competitive workforce. Is mandated to supervise and strengthen the local government unit's capability to effectively discharge its duties in providing basic services and facilities and improvement of quality of life of their constituents through implementation of various programs and projects. Through its business-friendly and competitive LGU's outcome areas, or BFCL, aim to provide interventions and reforms for the LGUs to enhance its enabling environment in engaging the business sector, promoting local trade and business to generate employment. BFCL's key component project, entitled Skills for Accelerated Growth in Local Government Training for Better Access to Job Opportunities, aim to capacitate target LGUs to develop its workforce development program and provide support in preparing their communities the necessary skilled workforce requirements of the private enterprises in priority sectors such as tourism, agribusiness, and information technology. STAG-LG Trabajo supports the national government's thrust to provide a sustainable intervention to improve the capacity and condition of the unemployed and empower them through skills training, which will lead to gainful employment and entrepreneurial activities. With the support of the Government of Canada, the for Local Economic Development is implemented an 8-year program which targeted to improve the local conditions of target communities by promoting a better enabling environment for local government while improving prospects for sustainable economic growth. LGSP-led selected 59 priority LGUs under the National Tourism Development Plan to be assisted in developing their value chain-based tourism circuit plans, which highlights, among others, workforce development recommendations in order to make the tourism sector more competitive. Led for LGU's curriculum addressed the existing gap in LGU's capacities for local economic development, seeking to enhance LGU capacities in carrying out this enabling role for lead and in pursuing economic development initiatives that create jobs and promotes pro-poor growth. LGUs have become increasingly aware of the importance of their role in promoting the local economic development, as there is also a growing need to enhance their capacities for lead. In recognition of this need, the department has actively pursued a capacity building program on lead for LGUs, and in line with this, collaborated with Bicol University for the implementation of STAG-LG Trabajo. It provided a funding amounting to 8,400,000 pesos for the conduct of trainings on trabajo and lead to selected LGUs in the Bicol region. The College of Business Economics and Management took the lead in implementing the project. The project intended to conduct trainings on trabajo and lead to the workforce development team and the lead champions of selected LGUs. Generally, the project aimed to provide capacity building and appropriate learning materials to the selected local government units in order to formulate necessary plans of actions to improve the socio-economic conditions of their respective communities. Specifically, it aimed to develop training modules on trabajo, to enhance the knowledge and skills of the potential or would-be trainers in conducting the trainings on trabajo and lead, to equip the workforce development team and the local economic champions with the knowledge and skills in developing workforce development plans and investment plans suited to the respective local government units, and to enhance their capacity to organize an industry. The profile of the participating LGUs was that their economy is dependent on agriculture. They have the potential to develop the agricultural sector into agricultural tourism. Most of them are located in coastal areas of the respective provinces, and they are commonly connected to road networks and agriculture resources and tourist spots. The trainees were participated by key and trabajo champions within the LGUs in the persons of tourism officers, municipal planning development officers, PESO, local economic and investment planning officers, and municipal or city agriculturists. In order to provide the quality of the training to be given to the target participants, modules on trabajo were developed. There were already existing modules for the lead training as provided by DILG. However, the trabajo modules were fully developed by the project team. A training of trainers was also conducted to faculty members of SEBEM and business practitioners in other relevant field on enterprise and public administration practitioners. This was to ensure that the trainers were well oriented on the underlying concept that the trainings had, which was entrepreneurial leadership. The project assisted a total of 31 local government units in the development of workforce development plans, local economic development plans, and investment collaterals that the Department of Interior and local government required. Along this line, the project resulted to the training of led teams composed of tourism officers, municipal agriculturists, municipal agricultural officers, LAPOs, municipal planning and development officers, municipal local government operations officers, and PESOs to become entrepreneurial and create an enabling environment that promotes entrepreneurship within their municipality. A total of 11 trainings were conducted and 217 lead champions of the 31 LGUs were trained. 2 modules were also developed by the component leaders of the project, and a total of 15,824 training hours were done under the Trabajo Led for LGU project. So these are some of the activities conducted for the project. And this is an example of an LGU officer conducting an area mapping as part of their business development plan. And this is one of the results of the project, investment collaterals developed by LGUs for tourism. So based on the feedback of the participants, it can be recommended that the project be continued for other municipalities that have yet to benefit from the Trabajo-led project. And our key takeaways from the project is that the best practices of SEBEM in conducting the Trabajo-led for LGU extension project is that it was very important for us to align our extension program to national, regional, and university agenda. It was also important that we develop relevant extension materials in relation to business economics and management and entrepreneurship, and sharing this with our clients. Another one is that we were able to conduct a BS Entrepreneurship Program relevant extension engagement, and of course there was a very proactive faculty involvement in the project, as 100% of the faculty members of SEBEM were active participants as facilitators or trainers in the project. So our key recommendations for this project is that the partnerships made with our government agencies, especially with the local government units, should be strengthened and fostered in order to explore other opportunities for collaboration. These collaborations could possibly be trainings on leadership, entrepreneurship, and management for LGUs and their constituents. Furthermore, an assessment on the immediate effect of the project to the LGU beneficiaries may be conducted by SEBEM. The strategic actions that could be continued by SEBEM is that we could draft and adopt similar program proposals, this time targeting LGUs that have yet to benefit from the trainings, as well as other government agencies and even barangays, and explore other opportunities for collaboration and partnerships with the 31 LGUs, specifically on trabajo and lead-related endeavors and engagements of the LGUs. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Trabajo Led for LGU project of Bicol University College of Business, Economics, and Management. Thank you and good day.
Thank you very much to the proponents and presenters of the various papers on extension, the technology that you have developed, the programs that you have implemented, and the knowledge that you have shared are indeed of great contribution towards community development. With this, we would like to present the Certificate of Appreciation to the paper presenters of this virtual conference. As the conference is about to conclude, let's welcome and hear the closing message of Professor Rowena F. Zoilo, the OIC Director of the BU Extension Management Division.
Good afternoon. Before we close this 2020 virtual conference on research, development, and extension, let me take this opportunity to thank all the moving spirits behind the success of this event. To our President, Dr. Arnulfo M. Mascareñas, for the trust and confidence for me to take the lead in the Extension Management Division, and for approving all those projects presented for us to be able to reach out to farmers, fisher folks, youths, local government units, and other clientele groups. To all the Vice Presidents, especially to our VP for Research, Development, and Extension, Dr. Luis O. Amano, for continuously supporting our ideas to put them into action, as well as the funding support to make all these projects feasible and possible. To all the OVP RDE, BU RDMD, and BU EMD, including the different center directors, the technical and administrative support staff, for being the workforce from the conceptualization, preparation, presentation, and post-evaluation of the activities. Our heartfelt thanks for the strong support and cooperation to this conference. To all the paper presenters, our warmest congratulations. May we continue to impact to the different communities and clients that we are serving through the commendable and laudable programs and projects that you presented. Matured technologies out of these extension endeavors may be replicated to other areas, while we can also explore opportunities for research out of those projects, and eventually make use of our learning experiences for education purposes. This is how the three mandates of BU as a higher education institutions intertwine. For us to be more meaningful and relevant and be able to contribute to local, national, and international development. Congratulations and good luck. Despite the challenges we are facing because of the pandemic and the many calamities we encountered, still we were able to make this regional conference a reality. Let us all move forward as we look for a brighter 2021. Maraming salamat po and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Professor Zoilo, for your unwavering commitment in supporting and directing the university's extension programs and activities towards their achievement. Once again, we would like to express our gratitude and appreciation to all our BU administrators, presenters, participants, and organizers for the success of the 5th Regional Conference on Promoting World-Class Education and the 3rd Regional Research, Development, and Extension Conference Part 3. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you in the succeeding programs of the Bicol University.